Hey everybody, welcome. Excited to be chatting with you guys today. Today we need to cover another one of those very dangerous myths out there about mental health that is affecting people who are suffering in a very serious way. And it's the myth of you're not depressed. Okay, and this comes in many forms, very often from family members or coworkers or individuals in somebody's life that are, just trying to actually help somebody who's in pain, but ending up actually making the situation much, much worse. And so what happens is, for somebody who's experiencing depression or anxiety in a very deep way, they will try to talk about their issues. They'll try to, talk about how they're feeling depressed, they're feeling like they've got perpetual anxiety going on. And then very often what happens is they have a friend or a loved one or family member, etc., who says, "Oh, what are you talking about? You're not depressed." And then very often a lot of the things that follow are things such as, you just need to focus on the positives, or you just need to remember all the things you have to be grateful for, or don't you know there are people out there who are suffering more than you are, or I dealt with that too, but it's just a phase, you'll get over it, or any other sort of variant of this. And I'm sure you've probably heard some of this before. So in fact, I would love, could you comment below? I'd love to know if you're dealing with depression or anxiety, what is the iteration of this myth that you've heard from other people around you? I'd love to hear kind of what has been your personal experience. Go ahead, drop that in a comment below. Now, the reason why this is really dangerous for people is depression and anxiety is something where, of course, if you're a loved one, you don't want the person who's suffering to actually be experiencing that pain. And so the first thing to understand, especially from the perspective of somebody who is suffering with depression and anxiety, is that the person who's the loved one who says you're not depressed is actually trying to help. And it doesn't mean that what they're doing is helping, but it does mean that what they're trying to do is help. What they're trying to do is kind of break you out of your current thought pattern. They're trying to get you to not assume the worst. They're trying to get you to think positively. Those things can be somewhat helpful sometimes, but when it's delivered through the message of you're not depressed, 99 times out of 100, it's not going to actually get the result that you really want. It's going to actually further cement the person in their pain, and it's going to affirm a suspicion that the person in pain has, which is that they can't really open up and talk to anyone in their life about what they're going through, and that they're only going to be misunderstood or judged. And that's a very dangerous thing, because when somebody who is suffering from depression or anxiety believes that they can't open up to other people and share what is going on with them, that means that the only person they have to try to deal with their issues is themselves. Meanwhile, they themselves are creating the issue, right, inside of their head, and it becomes a habituated pattern. And so now you create a situation where somebody may actually end up leading themselves to suicidal thoughts, because they may get themselves in a spot where they literally feel backed up in a corner. They are experiencing depression and anxiety, but no one around them believes what they're experiencing is real. And so they don't believe that they have an access point to be able to get, real strategies or insights or guidance or anything, or even just support. And that becomes a very difficult thing when you feel alone. When you feel depressed, but you feel supported, that's one thing. When you feel depressed and you feel alone, then all of a sudden you try thinking about what is the only way you could get out of there. And then, of course, you arrive at some sort of conclusion that could be devastating to themselves and to you as the loved one. So it's a very difficult situation. So here's the thing to understand. Depression and anxiety, and you may have heard me say this on other videos as well, it does not mean it's a permanent situation for somebody, but it is real. It's a very real process that happens for people. It's a very painful, very real situation, and it's not one that they're consciously choosing, okay? Now, it's not true that people who are depressed and anxious are, primarily trying to seek attention from other people. That's not true either. What is true is that depression and anxiety emerges as a conditioned response to stress in the environment, okay? So what happens for people is, over time, their nervous system develops stronger neural pathways that allow them to respond in a depressed or anxious state to stress in their environment. And when they've done this and done this and done this and habituated it over a period of time, it becomes such a strong neural pathway that it seems like something that they just go into automatically. And so it's something that's happening at the subconscious mind, not the conscious mind per se. And so that's why people who are dealing with depression and anxiety feel like they're being misunderstood, because it's not something that they're choosing. It's not something that, they're deliberately trying to do to themselves. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that they always have to live that way. It doesn't mean that they cannot access the real strategies and the real insights to be able to actually turn it around in a short period of time. So you got to understand that if you're ever telling somebody you're not depressed, you're further cementing the idea in their head that they are. You're making things very worse for them. It's kind of like, you're telling somebody who's got asthma, how could you have asthma? There's all of this oxygen around, right? That's kind of like telling somebody who's depressed, how could you be depressed? There's all of this, joy around you, right? It doesn't really work like that. And so if they have a habituated pattern of focus or thought or memory or emotion or behavior that's causing them to habitually go into those states of anxiety and depression, that's the real issue that has to be turned around. So you telling them you're not depressed is not really helping the issue at all. If anything, it's pushing them further away from you and into a darker corner in their mind, and that's not where you want them to go. So what's the appropriate response? Well, if somebody tells you they've got depression, you could ask a question like, well, how do you know? Or why would you say that? Or what makes you say that? Or, what do you believe your symptoms are, right? Those would be interesting questions to ask, to explore, to listen, to make the person feel like they actually have someone to be able to talk to. And of course, you've got to understand that no real change happens unless you actually get them or yourself real access to lasting help, right? And so those of you who are familiar with our work, we have a 5-step process that helps people get rid of anxiety and depression in 60 days, and it serves people incredibly well. And it's something, that virtually everybody can take advantage of if they meet the right qualifications. So I'm curious, have you ever been told you're not depressed before? Drop in a comment below. What have people told you in the past about your situation that falls into this myth? I would really love to hear what your personal experience has been. And then myself, or a team member would love to reach out and provide the real support that you actually need, and see if we can offer any strategies that may be able to actually help you move things in the right direction. So thanks so much for listening. Go get the help that you need. And if you're a loved one that knows of somebody who's suffering, reach out to them, give them the support they need, and make sure they take action today to get the help they need as well. Thanks so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.